Good evening. My name is Brother Steve Jones. I'm the chairman of the Voteless People as a Hopeless People. I want to welcome you to our fourth webinar concerning BPHP. On behalf of our General President, Dr. Willis Lonzer, our executive team, we welcome our brotherhoods and those friends of Alpha Alpha that are interested in this very critical matter. What I'd like to do at this time, given the amount of material we have to cover, to get right into today's presentation. So at this time, our first slide, please. At this time, we're having a connection issue. Tim, can you assist us on moving to the next presentation? Bear with me here, folks. Okay, given the amount of the agenda, we're going to move quickly through this. As we approach the home stretch, it's now not time to be faint of heart. So as we get started here, we're going to have Brother Carl Pickney join us shortly to talk about a number of initiatives relative to the Divine Nine and what his committee has been doing relative to civic engagement. You'll see the agenda here in front of us. As mentioned last month, this is critical. Brother Burton Witness Tandy made this comment that given this critical election cycle, as the buzz in the community is this is the most critical election ever that we're facing, that's probably a true statement. Given all the issues, January 6th and other matters, it's going to be very critical that we turn out the vote and participate. So with that in mind, Brother Pickney, chair of the Civic Engagement and Political Action, will you please take over and review your presentation? Thank you.
Good evening, brothers. I am Brother Carl Pickney, General Chair for the Commission on Political and Civic Engagement and the National Social Action Chair for Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, Incorporated. One of the first presentations I have is a video message with Brother Representative Emmanuel Cleaver from the 5th District of Missouri, a video message on the importance of voting. Please roll the video. My name is Carl Pickney. I'm the National Social Action Chair for Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, Incorporated. And I'm joined today by our former Congressional Black Caucus Chair, our good Alpha brother, Representative Emmanuel Cleaver. Brother Cleaver, thank you so much for being in Durham, North Carolina.
Good to be with you. I can't think of another place I'd rather be. This is it right here.
Yeah. Whereas Alpha Phi Alpha is poised for the 2022 election, we want to have you give us a few remarks about the importance of voting and what get out the vote really means for you.
Well, I think over the years, we probably exaggerated the significance of a particular vote. We've said, if this is the most important election of your lifetime and so forth. I think those were in many ways exaggerations, although every vote is significant. But now in 2022, it's not just a congressional election. It's not just an election where members of the Senate will replace members of the Senate and maybe tell which way the Senate is going to go, 51% or more in either the Democratic or Republican column. But right now, I think democracy itself is on the ballot. Democracy is taking a hit today, much more than it has maybe in the history of the Republic. I was in Washington when there was an attempt at a coup d'etat. And so if we are not able to put men and women in place in 2022, I'm telling you now that we're in trouble, because democracy itself sits on the ballot. We're either going to make a decision that we're going to be a democratic republic, or we're going to decide that maybe this thing just has worn out. Maybe the gas is out, the tank is empty, and we'll now try some kind of other form of government. But if we appreciate the founders and what they did, then it's on the ballot.
One last thing, Representative Cleaver, and you mentioned it. What is the importance of down ballot races like school boards, town commissions, mayors? What is the significance of making sure our people understand down ballot races?
Well, what has happened over the past few years is that there are a number of organizations like BALLOT, which is a pretty right-wing group, and they formulate legislation, and they form it out to state legislatures, school boards, and so forth. Right now, the school boards around the country are perhaps the most contentious elective office that one can hold. I mean, at a time when they're banning books, at a time when they're talking about ridiculous things in terms of not being taught Black history, we can't afford to just vote at the top and walk out. The foundation on which this nation sits is down ballot. And if we flunk there, we flunk everywhere.
Yeah, Representative Cleaver, I want to thank you so much. Thank you for being in Durham. Thank you for really stressing the importance of a voteless people is a hopeless people.
Good to be with you.
So, brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha and friends, I'm truly grateful for Representative Cleaver giving us a message with his presence of being in the Capitol on January the 6th, when the coup d'etat was attempted to overthrow the peaceful transition of power. He could speak to being in the room. And what I want to stress and move forward with is we want everybody to understand the significance of having a position, something that's important to you about why we want you to vote. So what I want to do is walk through the positions on the ballot and breaking down the ballot. So let me put that presentation up and walk you through breaking down the ballot. So this presentation is a courtesy of the relationship that we have here in North Carolina with the North Carolina Black Alliance. And they have done some work that is really authored with the intent of speaking to Black people, but also it breaks down the issues of why we need to vote. So in breaking down the ballot, the positions that truly help our form of government, whether it be the federal government, the state government, or the local government, government plays a significant part in our lives. I cannot stress that enough. Government plays a significant part in our lives. The federal government, the state governments, and local governments. So the positions on the ballot involve all of those positions at the federal government level, at the state government level, and the local government level. Our mayors, county sheriffs at the local government and all those other government offices. At the state government, whether it's the governor, the attorney general, secretary of state, there are statewide offices that are on the ballot. And at the federal level, U.S. Senate, U.S. House of Representatives are on the ballot. This document will be available to all people who are participating in this call, as well as any of our friends that are interested in seeing it. But let me hit some of the hot button issues. And these are our issues. These are not just issues for the North Carolina Black Alliance, these are our issues. These are bread and butter issues in Black communities across the country. Crime and justice. What positions will impact this area? How does this relate, especially to our college students at historically Black colleges and universities? It's on the ballot, crime and justice. We want our kids in our communities to have an experience. And in these scenarios, there are real stories of people that have truly been impacted by whomever is in a position of authority, whether it be, again, at the level of sheriffs, to city councils, to chief of police, to district attorneys. We know from crime and justice that there's racism in the criminal justice system. The men of this fraternity are no strangers to that. We understand racial profiling and what that means. But let's be honest about this. These are some hostile times. So there's a lot of hatred that's being sold in the political environment. And it creeps right into the criminal justice system. So criminal justice is on the ballot. Economic empowerment. There are positions that impact this program area. How does this affect our collegiate students, especially at HBCUs? There's a scenario that breaks down the impact, a real story from a young lady named Ashley, who shares her story within this particular scenario. But as you dig into it further, you find that the effects that's coming about because of this issue comes from our federal senators and representatives, from our state senators and representatives. Because the issues of economic empowerment, wages and low-wage workers, lending discrimination, inflation and increased interest rates, all of these decisions are driven by the people that we elect. So economic empowerment is on the ballot. Education. What impact in the area of education is affecting our kids, our students, our grandkids, our nieces, our nephews? There's a scenario here of Jason, who just graduated from an HBCU. But he's impacted by the tax system. And of course, he's looking for federal assistance to help him with student loan debt. So student loan debt is again on the ballot, but it's on the ballot in the area of education, because we need to elect people who really understand the significance of what an education does for people in our community. So education is on the ballot, whether it be the U.S. senators, the U.S. House of Representatives, local government, Senate and House members, county commissioners or parish-wide commissioners, school boards, state board of education. All of these positions are on the ballot. And it goes even further into getting into, there are certain bills that will either move, whether it be in the U.S. Congress or in the local state house. There are certain bills that are on the ballot, because depending upon the outcome of the election will determine if that bill moves or if that bill does not move. So education is on the ballot. Environmental justice is on the ballot. The impact that happens with our environments, the way science is being taken into the political environment, whether or not senators, representatives will vote to pass laws that help our environment. So environmental justice is on the ballot. And there are key legislation that's caught up right now in the U.S. Senate and in the U.S. House that can't move because the votes that's needed to move is not just there. So we need to elect people that will move the policy agenda. So environmental justice is on the ballot. Access to health care. There are scenarios that talk about health care. But we all know the rubber meets the road also with the United States Supreme Court that recently overturned a woman's right to choose. So health care is on the ballot. A woman's right to choose is on the ballot. And as we move through and we really start looking at the legislative policies, again, it comes down to who's in our United States Senate, who's in our United States House of Representatives, whereas Medicaid expansion will either be passed or not passed, depending upon who we elect. Social Security and Medicare for grandma, grandpa, for those of us that are senior citizens and moving toward retirement, Social Security and Medicare is on the ballot. Political effectiveness is on the ballot. Voter access, voter education, voter registration, voter engagement is on the ballot. What was once the right to vote being a luxury is now a threat to a certain group of people who want to roll back voting rights. So voting is on the ballot. So here's how we can really make a difference. We need every person voting. We need to take 5 to 10 friends with us to vote. There are so many issues that are on the ballot. Let's move back to the presentation as I wrap up my portion of this webinar. Put the main presentation back up, please. Advance a few slides, I'll tell you when to stop. You can back it up. I think this is where Brother Jones take over. So you can back it up to the beginning. Let me wrap up by saying this to the brothers. There are a number of issues that are on the ballot. Silence is certainly not an option, brothers. In these early days of early voting, we want everybody to vote. But don't stop there. Make certain we're talking about the issues that are important, especially in the Black community. We all have something at stake. And as our good fraternity brother, Representative Emmanuel Cleaver, and the other 7 Alpha brothers who were in the United States Congress, they were all in the room on January the 6th. And we have personally heard stories from each of them on the threat to democracy, but more important, the threat to their lives. So, brothers, our lives are on the ballot. I'm encouraging us to vote as though our life depends on it, because it really does. God bless, and I turn it back over to our General Chair for Voteless People is a Hopeless People, Brother Stephen Jones.
All right, thank you, Brother Pickney. At this time, let's continue with the presentation. There are very key points that he mentioned, that we all have a stake in this, that it's up to us to vote. Also, there's a program that also with the D9 in terms of their activity to get out the vote as well, where basically it's going to be turnout, turnout, turnout. Also, one of the things we're facing right now is voter intimidation. So this is what voter intimidation looks like. So if you're at the ballot box, a drop off, or if you're at the poll, if any of these behaviors occur, that's voter intimidation, and it is illegal. Therefore, the next slide gives you some resources if in fact you feel you're being intimidated. A number to call with the Department of Justice. There's also an email link. I highly recommend that you print this page off when we make the PowerPoint available at the VPH website and have it available for you when you're doing your voting, and make it available also to your friends as well. Also, Department of Justice, there are more additional information. Also, if in fact a person has American with Disability Acts, if they feel they don't have access to polls due to handicap ramps, etc., that's also a violation of voter intimidation. At least we not forget, it was not too long ago in this particular case, in 1964, the poll tax was used to disenfranchise voters. They have a new way of going about that. We can never forget this, that we've not been too long from voter intimidation for people of color. As mentioned by Brother Pickney's presentation, voter suppression also deals with fear, such as inflation. Frankly, a U.S. representative, a U.S. senator is not going to resolve inflation. If they say they want to fight inflation, ask them what is their plan. Because pretty much America's a free economy. It's a business solution that's going to require to fix inflation. It's painful, but we will get through it. Crime. When we look at crime, a lot of that is based upon the discrimination that we face in our communities in housing and education. If in fact any politician wants to address crime, then you need to ask them, what are you going to do to address crime? How are you going to fund K-12? How are you going to deal with housing? These are issues that are important. Just not let a politician say these are fears and be scared. Challenge them on it, ask the questions, and make sure you vote in your best interest. Gerrymandering. Once again, because of the census in 2020, a lot of states are trying to redo the districts to impact the House of Representatives. For those that are listening in the state of Ohio, there was legislation to redistrict Ohio, whereas it would have pretty much the majority would be Republican districts and only 2 Democratic districts. If in fact that Supreme Court is changed, there's potential that that legislative branch would have their way and basically take 10 to 13 seats and make them all Republican. Those are issues that we need to address. Also, earlier this year, the state of New York tried to redistrict, but it was also beaten down by the Supreme Court. And in that case, you saw multiple Democrats compete against each other in the primaries because of the redistricting that was decided upon by the state of New York. As mentioned, your vote does count. It's very important that it's going to be turnout, turnout, turnout. And you'll see in the next few slides that in most cases, a majority of elections is only decided by 2 to 4 to 8 points, which is a very small percentage. So we need to encourage our people to vote, friends, families, Black and brown, Asian, people that are interested in fair and equitable society in America and in fair democracy. We need to make sure that we are getting to the polls. This gives you an overview for the 2022. As mentioned, the Senate 34 seats, the House of Representatives, and also 36 gubernatorial elections, which also includes potentially the Secretary of State, which is responsible for the state's voting, attorney generals, and other offices. As you can see here on this chart, for instance, in Georgia, Brother Warnock, his margin of victory was 2.1%. He's pretty much in a dead heat currently. So that turnout will be important. You'll see in Indiana, a percentage was 9.7. Certain states are more competitive than others. Alabama, 28.1%. However, that's an open seat. So as you look at that list, we can move this election if, in fact, we get out and vote. You can see in this particular case, Pennsylvania, the debate last night, you can see the margins there. Once again, 2 to 3 to 4 points would make a difference in the outcome of that election. Also in North Carolina, A heavier turnout, 8 to 10 points higher, that would be a difference maker for that state. Nevada, you can see the difference. Missouri, you can see the difference. So once again, across the board, all 50 states. That's why with our logo, every voter, every election, that's what's important. That's how we're going to make a difference, not only for our communities, but also for this country. Also, mayor elections, as was mentioned. Mayors dictate the pace of a city. So it's important to understand who's running for office for mayor, who's running for school board, etc. Down ballot issues. As was mentioned in the prior presentation, depending upon your state, have you gotten your state's voter guide, which actually gives you examples of the candidates, what they're running for, what their platforms are. Have you read it? Do you understand it? If you've not gotten it, you can use Google and do a keyword search. Here's an example. Put in your state or city voter guide to see what response you have. In certain states, they have a blue book, and that's what you search on. Also, you can take a look at your Secretary of State's website. They may have the same information to let you know who's running for what office and what the positions are. School boards and city councils. If in fact we want to make an impact in our schools, we have to have representation on the school boards. The other thing would be, I would submit to you is, after this election, the fraternity brothers chapters, at least every school board meeting have at least one member of the fraternity attend a school board meeting to make our presence known, to be aware of the issues, and to make sure that we're engaged in our school boards for the education of our children. Also, the next slide will be a couple examples of chapters that are engaged in their communities. Would ask, if in fact you're participating in the National Vote Early Day on Friday, the 28th, if you're participating in that, ask that you take pictures and either use a reporting tool, which is on the VPHP website, and submit your activities there. Or the other option is just to send an email, as listed below, to include description of the event, chapter name, etc., etc. And we'll capture the information and we'll share that at our general convention in Dallas. As you can see here, college brothers in Florida working to get the vote out. Another example, brothers working with also Divine Nine in participation of getting the vote out. Also here in Virginia, on October 1st, they had a candidate forum where they allowed basically the congressional representatives to talk. Also at that time, our own brother Bobby Scott was a participant in that webinar, or actually in that town hall meeting. As we move forward, the use of technology would encourage other chapters to understand how they can host these town hall meetings so they can get the information of candidates to the public. Also partner with the other Divine Nine members to host these events. Also this evening, if you're in California, Inglewood, there will be a candidate forum for the city of Inglewood, and that link is available, and it starts at 6:30 Pacific time. At this time, are there any questions? We're going to take a quick look at the comment section. If there are any questions, please post them there. If not, you can always follow up to my email, which is bphp@afia1906.net, and we'll be more than happy to get back to you. And in closing, brothers, as we try to keep these to about 30 minutes, we're right on time. Now, just keep in mind that each region needs to understand their election cycle and their voter registration requirements. In most states, early voting will start if it's not already started. In certain states, you cannot register to vote because it's too late, unless you're in a state that has same-day voter registration or allows for late registration. Understand what the requirements are to do a provisional ballot to make sure if in fact you do have the opportunity. Also, depending upon your state, if they're convicted felons, if they've done their time, paid all their fines, they should be eligible to register to vote. Keep in mind that we don't tell people who to vote for. We don't recommend anyone. We just want the membership, our friends, to be knowledgeable of the candidates, their positions, and not to vote against our interest. As was mentioned, if in fact your grandparents, parents are receiving Social Security, if someone's saying, hey, I want to take away Social Security, that probably not be a good vote in your interest. I also like to point out that we're going to try to do another webinar on Tuesday, November 1st, which will be 7 days before the election. At that time, we're going to try to basically take a look at, recap what chapters have done for voter registration and what their game plan is to get out the vote on election day. With that, I want to thank Brother Carl Pickney for participating in this webinar this evening. I want to thank the support team behind the scenes for making this presentation available. And once again, on behalf of the General President, Willis Lonzer, and the Alpha Alpha Fraternity Leadership Team, we want to thank you very much for your participation. And we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Thank you, and have a good evening.